The Illuminate Arts and Faith Conference in Chattanooga, Tennessee wants to help you find your tribe. Do you get way too excited about quoting Wendell Berry or C.S. Lewis in conversations with coworkers? Does your Spotify playlist include hymns, a little jazz, and a whole lot of Andrew Peterson? Join your tribe at Illuminate March 31 and April 1 for education and inspiration from speakers Russ Ramsey, Douglas McKelvey, John Hendricks, and others. Find a complete list of session topics and ticket information at southern.edu/illuminate.
In 2024, I set out to meet as many poets as I could and spend an hour with each one. I got more than I bargained for, more insight, more clarity, more hope. It's proved to be one of the richest highlights of my life. 17 writers, 17 deeply human conversations that made me sit up and pay attention. Franz Kafka once said, if the book we're reading doesn't wake us up with a blow to the head, what are we reading for? A book must be the axe for the frozen sea within us. And that's what I hope this new book will do. I hope it wakes us up, my friends. I hope these conversations will be the catalyst for something to be reawakened, re-enchanted, and reinvigorated. It's called An Axe for the Frozen Sea, Conversations with Poets about what matters most. I'm Ben Palpin, and I hope you'll come and listen in as I spend a little time with poets like Lucy Shaw, Malcolm Guite, Dana Gioia, and Lee Young Lee. Pull up a chair at the table as we dig into what it means to write well and to live well. An Axe for the Frozen Sea is now available from Rabbit Room Press. Visit the store at rabbitroom.com, or better yet, ask about it at your favorite bookseller.
Nobody wants to see an artist in isolation. Nobody wants to be a person in isolation. And so we all want to think that when we fail, somebody is going to be there caring for us. And so I think there's something really powerful about seeing that represented.
Welcome to the Habit Podcast, conversations with writers about writing. I'm Jonathan Rogers, your host. Andy Osenga is a singer-songwriter, a guitarist, a record producer, a podcaster, a writer, and a friend and mentor to countless artists. For 20 years and more, he has been right in the middle of things in Nashville's creative community. And I've benefited greatly from Andy's friendship through the years. So I was delighted to have him as a guest at the Habit's 2025 Winter Writers Weekend. This episode was recorded live at that event in a room full of writers at the Rabbit Room's North Wind Manor. Welcome to the Habit Podcast. I'm so happy to have Andy Osenga here. This is a live recording at the Habit Winter Writers Retreat 2025. And Andy Osenga was very kind to come join us tonight. So thanks for being here, Andy.
Glad to be here.
You've done so many different things, so many different kinds of creative work. I was talking to somebody earlier about that you, on the one hand, you sort of this technical person, you're interested in sound and guitar pedals and things like that, but you're also a writer. And can you bridge? Is this a way to talk about the bridge between being interested in things like guitar pedals and sound, and also lyric and
Yeah.
That may not seem like a strange mix to you, but some people it might.
Yeah, I love that you asked that. I actually had a conversation about this yesterday. First of all, hi, and thank you for letting me be here. It's an honor to be with you. I feel like you are all far more accomplished as writers than I am, so I feel like it's silly that I'm here, sitting here talking to you guys. But I literally was having a conversation with somebody yesterday. We were talking about Da Vinci and how he painted the Mona Lisa and invented the helicopter, and also was a famous poet and was a famous politician, and was known for being incredibly proficient and world class at all these, as a scientist and as an artist and as a spokesperson, all these things. And no one's ever well, he was an amateur politician because he was a painter, and he was an amateur scientist because no, he was the greatest at all these things. But our culture likes to think that, well, you go to college and you majored in this, so this is what you do, and then that means that this thing that you do is a hobby. But if we look throughout history, some of the most interesting and influential people are people who are multiple disciplinarians. And because what you learn in art bleeds into science, bleeds into church, bleeds into family, bleeds into politics, bleeds into all these things. Like what you learn in one discipline just is always applicable to something else. And so I have just found it really fun to get into one thing and then get into something else and realize it's not that different. And then what's different about it is really fun and exciting.
Yeah.
And then I get to go, but there's stuff that is me, that I can still be me here, and there's stuff that I've learned and have enjoyed learning that I can still use here, and then it's also fun to learn and grow.
Yeah.
So I am kind of a technical person. I love being an audio engineer, and I love working with sound, and guitar pedals are my actual hobby. Like, I am a collector of guitar pedals, and I think they are just the most. My kids laugh at me because, like, our YouTube algorithm at home is just all the things that teenager girls are into, and then Dad's YouTube guitar channels, because I'll just watch guys doing demos of guitar pedals all night, and I'm like, this is real fun for me. I think it's really fun. But what you learn from, like, how a compressor works on your pedal board also works in the studio with a microphone and a singer, but is also kind of how a poem works. Like, there's still something really similar about peaks and highs and lows, and like, it's actually really similar. If you've got too many things too much going into something, it's too crowded. You've got to thin it down. You've got to figure out how to tamp down the highs and bring up the lows. And it's like, it's the same thing. It's totally different, but it's the same thing. And you know that if you can get this signal that's wild and crazy, to get it to be smaller, you can then get the whole thing louder. And it might not make any sense, but when you know how that works, all of a sudden you go, but it totally makes sense in these other things. Yeah. And it works in an office. It works when I've been working at a record company, and you go, if I can get these people to understand how to do this way, then this team can be more efficient at their job. And right now they're erratic. They're up and down, and they're crazy, and nothing's getting done. It sounds like an uncompressed guitar. But if we can get it under control, they can be more effective. So all that to say, it's taken me for a long time. I felt like it was a failure of mine that I felt erratic, and I felt like it was something that was hurting my career. And like, I'd heard that the phrase, a jack of all trades, a master of none, was like, that's my career. But then I heard somebody say recently, that's not the whole phrase. And I don't remember what it is. I only heard it somewhere on like a podcast, but it's actually not the whole, it's not the whole, that's not the correct phrase, and it's not the whole phrase. It was a Shakespearean phrase. It was like that a jack of all trades and a master of something. And it's describing a polymath. It's describing somebody who's really interested in lots of things, and it makes them better at all these things.
Well, you used the word amateur a little while ago.
Yeah.
You used it, like in a negative sense, but of course that just means somebody who loves what they do. Somebody who they act out of love instead of for money. Even though you can also get paid.
I could have just said that. That's way easier. I hope even professionals are amateurs. I hope they act out of love. Right? Yeah. And that's something I've known you for a long time, and you're a guy who loves stuff. You love guitar pedals and songs and people in your church. Yeah. So I love that. All right. So you mentioned working at a record company. You've been for about 10 years now, I think. Is that right? 10 years you've been working at a record company as an A&R person, or have you been an A&R person the whole time? So I did it for about 10 years. I'm currently not, and I'm currently how do I say this? Figuring out how to do something new.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes, I worked in two different record companies one for about a little over 2 years, one for about 6 years.
Yeah.
And I still work with a bunch of record companies as a sort of consultant, and so I still work in that business.
Yeah. So A&R is a term that not everybody knows.
Yeah.
But I'm super interested in. I mean, I think people be interested in knowing what is an A&R person.
Yeah.
And again, I think you're a person who's uniquely suited for that kind of work. So let's start with what's A&R. What does that even mean?
It means artists and repertoire. So it's somebody who deals with artists and their songs. So an A&R guy is the person that you see in a movie who represents the record company. And they're always the person in the movie that at the beginning of the movie is the good guy and at the end of the movie is the bad guy. And that's the job that I have done at record companies for about 10 years. So, and at times I've probably been seen as the good guy and as the bad guy.
Okay, so it means artist and repertoire, but what does that mean?
So it means you're a couple different things. You're the liaison between the artists and the record company. So you speak both languages. So I speak artist and I speak business. Mm-hmm. So I have to be able to tell the label what the artist is thinking because they don't understand it. I have to be able to talk to the artist and tell them what the label's thinking because they don't understand it. And then I also have to go find artists for the label. And then once I sort of find them and bring them into the fold, then becomes sort of like a project manager, mm-hmm. in essence, and work with an artist to all right, what do you want to say? What's the best way to say it? Is it time to do your next record? What's it about? Who are the right people to work with? Who should be the right producer? We should probably get some co-writers involved in this record. Who should we be writing with? What's the first single? Let's make sure, all just kind of working with their team, working with their manager and their booking agent, and just sort of being a big part of their overall strategy, and just kind of being sort of a coach. It's a coach role.
Yeah.
And so in some places I'm really hands off, and it's like, all right, guys, you're awesome. Here's your budget. Your record is due on this date. I'm going to check in once a month and make sure you're doing okay. And then some, it's like I am in the studio every day and we're like digging into songs, and it's like we're rewriting the second verses and we're rewriting the bridges, and we're like, I'm playing on the records and I'm mixing the records and I'm like deeply involved. And so it depends on what the artist needs. Mm-hmm.
You earlier, before we started recording, you were comparing the A&R role to sort of an acquisitions editor in a publishing house.
Yeah, it's the same kind of idea.
Yeah. And what's the question? I don't know what the question. I want to get you to talk about what it's like, what you've learned from helping younger artists. I assume almost all these artists are younger than you.
Not always,
but really?
Often.
Okay.
No, sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. And then I guess, maybe the question is, you have kind of you're in a different era of your career from being a person who who is the young person being developed or whatever to being to sort of giving back. You've always been very involved in other artists' life, but now I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit.
I've had some people who have been that for me, who've spoken in my career when I was younger, and so it's fun to get to be that person for others, and I still have people that are doing that. I think I'm more active in seeking that out in my career now.
Huh.
Like I think when I was younger, I really just hoped people would do that for me.
Yeah.
And often, actually, to be honest, I would be bitter when people weren't.
Huh.
I expected it to come to me, to be honest. And I spent a long time in my 20s as a bitter man.
Huh.
And don't like that about my story, but it's a part of my story. But I spend a lot of my time trying to be intentional with people now. both seeking out, hey, I feel like these younger artists, I want to reach out to these people. I feel like maybe I could help them in some way, or I just think they need a friend, or I just think they're awesome and I want to tell them. And also reaching out to older artists, or either artists or people in the business who I respect, and saying, hey, I would love to spend time with you.
Yeah.
Because there are still people, in 20 years they won't be around.
Yeah.
But they are. And 20 years ago they were too busy and they didn't have time, and I was one of a million people my age in the business, and now there aren't that many people my age in the business.
Yeah.
And so these people are willing to sort of go out to lunch or go out to coffee, which has been great. It's weird, but it's true. And so and these are people like who I grew up listening to their music or reading their names in liner notes, and now it's like, oh, they live in this town, and I'll just, hey, I don't know you, but we have some mutual friends. Can I buy you lunch? And they're always like, wow, yeah, because they don't.
Nobody likes paying for their own lunch.
Yeah, and often they're not as active anymore. They may not be doing it like they used to, and so. Anyway, so I try to spend a lot of time getting to know people who I can ask questions of, and who I can learn from, and that's been a real gift in this season of life.
Yeah,
I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh yeah, you did. Well, I want to return to the. You mentioned that you were bitter when you were younger. Can you put a finger on how you got less bitter?
How I got less bitter? Yes, I can. A few ways. So I had some friends that didn't give up on me. I have one friend in particular. This was a big moment. I talk about this I don't know if you read this chapter of the book. You didn't have to. But I wrote about it in my book. And, but I had this friend, I was probably 24, 25. And I think I'd been this good Christian kid. And maybe some of you will resonate with this, maybe not. This is a lot, I'm sharing a lot right now. I don't know how we got here. But maybe some of you had this experience. I'd been told, at least the tradition I'd been raised in, I'd been told if you did these things, then God would reward you with these things. And I felt like I had done these things. And then these things did not happen. And I was pissed off about it. And the truth is, those things I'd been told were not true. Also, I'd not really done the things that I'd said. So both of those things were not true. However, I was too young to understand either of those things. So, which did not negate the fact that I was hurt, right? And was really hurting. And I had this friend named Matthew who took me to the Pizza Hut lunch buffet right up here at Old Hickory and Nolensville. It was the only Pizza Hut lunch buffet left in Nashville because I had made a comment about how when I was a kid I had a fond memory for the Pizza Hut lunch buffet, and he remembered it. And he's like, dude, there's one in Nashville, let's go. That's sweet. So I was like, okay. And so we ate, which was disgusting also. And so we ate at the Pizza Hut lunch buffet, and we were sitting there, and all of a sudden he got kind of nervous, and he goes, hey, I'm going to tell you something that none of our friends, the rest of our friends are too scared to tell you. I don't know if you believe this. You're an a-hole, he said. Just looked me straight in the eyes. We love you, but you got to stop. It's like, you're so mad, and we don't know how to talk to you anymore. Wow. And there were a couple people in particular that I just was so mad at, and I just couldn't let it go. And it was just taking over every conversation. And he's like, have you ever thought about forgiving these guys? Have you ever thought about forgiving that one guy? And I was like, no. And to the point where it felt like when he said that word, like forgiveness, like I don't even know what you're talking about. I've never heard that word before. It was like that moment was like a snapping of, it was a real turning point in my life. And that was actually like, there was a real before and after of that for me. And it was not that like everything immediately changed, but I can say that there was like, it was a downward slope and then it started to move up, and started a gradual shift into like leaning into community, choosing gratitude, choosing joy, and yeah, man, it's so much better. It's so much better. And then probably for the next 10 years, I was just so mad at who that guy was, the me of my 20s. And now I'm 45 now. Now I just have so much just compassion for that guy, that kid. I just want to just like give him a hug, just be like, bro, I'm so like, just, it's okay. Anyway, I don't know how we got into this.
Yeah, you're the one who mentioned that you were better. And so.
Yeah, I know. You followed it up. You're like a good interviewer. Good job.
Okay. Can you talk about those three phases you just described?
Yeah.
Bitter Andy.
Yep.
What was the second phase? Mad at bitter Andy.
Sure. Yeah.
Mad at everybody else, mad at yourself, and then compassionate to yourself.
Yeah.
What was it in all those eras you were doing creative work?
Yeah.
Oh. How did you approach creative work different in those three eras?
That's a fun question. Okay. I think, not having thought about this before, so I will take a stab at this.
Okay.
My hunch is, I think when I first started doing creative work, you're just doing it because you can. And it's just thrilling because you're like Spider-Man finding out you have powers, right? You're just like, can I climb this wall? What? So that's when like the first time you do anything, and then I think probably around that time I think when finding out that those powers didn't give me all the things I wanted them to give me is probably when I started to get really mad and bitter. Yeah. So then I think I started trying to use my creativity to prove something to people.
Yeah.
So, and I hear that in my records. It's like, why are these guitar solos so long? Because I'm wanting to prove to you that I'm so good.
Yeah.
Because I'm wanting to prove to me that I'm so good, right? Because I'm trying to prove it. And I can just hear it. Like I can hear me trying to and then it's not even like, it's not trying to show off. It's not showing off. It's like a deeper, it's like a proving it. It's like a fighting. It's a fighting against something. And it's this trying to prove yourself. And to me, that's that anger. It's that sort of fighting for every scrap of ground you can get. Maybe some of you have felt that or know what I'm talking about. Maybe you don't. And I think then there's another switch, which is, that's not what this is for. This is for other people. And so I think I've spent the last decade of my career, the part that has felt so much more free and joyful. And honestly, I have made more stuff, more creative. I have made more stuff, more weird stuff, more stuff. When it's just been like, I can make this for these people. I can make this for these people. What if people could use this? What if people could use this? And and I still make some stuff for me. This one's just for me. But it's really about what are these things for? So it's like if I'm writing a letter, like your first, well, I guess maybe when you start to write as a kid, like you're learning your letters just because you've got to learn your letters. And then maybe I don't know why you're writing angrily, but at some point you realize that you're writing a letter because you're trying to communicate something.
Yeah.
You know, so like, what am I communicating? Well, when I'm writing these songs, what am I trying to say to somebody outside of who I am? It's who are you? Why do you need to hear this song? Why do you need to read this book? Why do you need to watch this video? Why do you do whatever these things are that we're making? How does this actually serve you? And especially now that I'm helping other artists, being able to help them say, like, okay, what, you know, like, why are people going to listen to your record? Why are people going to use this thing that we're making? Like, how can we serve people with this? And that's been a great thing to be able to help other people and realize that I'm asking them the question that I also then get to go home and take to my own work and go, oh yeah, how are people going to use this?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea that you have been through all that, and then you're speaking directly into the lives of young artists.
I hope them maybe get a little quicker through that process.
Yeah. Were there people trying to get you quicker through that process? You didn't listen?
Yeah, I didn't listen. I remember, in fact, one of them was Charlie Peacock, who was a guy who was a part of that early phase of my career, and just was like, this kid. And then I remember years later being at a thing, and I played some songs, and him coming after me and being like, I'm glad you're okay, man. And we've since, it's been really sweet the last number of years, but it was it's really, you're doing all right. And was, oh, thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Charlie was our guest, I guess, last summer at this
awesome.
event. Yeah,
Awesome.
Charlie and Andy.
Man,
yeah.
What a great dude.
I know. Okay, so you just submitted the manuscript for a book.
I did, yeah.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks.
Since the book's not coming out for a long time, we'll have you back on to talk about the book. But I'd love to hear you talk about the difference between the kind of work you've been doing with your music and book writing.
Yeah.
One thing I mentioned in is the sort of solitary nature of book writing.
Yeah.
It's hard to make music by yourself.
It is.
And writing a book, a long part of it, you are by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so different. Yeah. And I mean, I like to make music with people. I like to make music on my own too. But yeah, I was not prepared for how much of writing a book is just you by yourself.
Yeah.
And how quickly you get tired of your own voice. Yeah. So I know so many of you guys have written books, and I just am like, way to go. It's, but yeah, I've always wanted to do this. It's been a thing I've wanted to do since I was 15 years old. And I thought that would be my path early on. And then music opened up really, really quickly. And so but then over the last few years, I have ended up kind of ghostwriting some, not books, but like some random things in the music world where I've had to write, I don't know, press releases or stories behind things. And I just ended up writing a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And there was somebody at a publishing company who had been involved in some of the work that I'd been doing. And she was like, you should write a book. And I was like, I would love to. Mm. And so we talked about it for a few years. And then, so I was really, really grateful for the opportunity. And so it was very different. And so I started kind of, I pushed it off for a few years because I felt like I didn't know what I wanted to say. And I didn't want to just jump at an opportunity without having a real reason to say something. Because I feel like I've done that a lot in my career. Uh-huh. Well, there's an opportunity, I better take it. But then not being really, I wanted it to be useful for people, you know? I didn't want to make that mistake again. Yeah. So when I finally felt like, I think I have something that might serve other people and that I would enjoy writing, that I could be like, I think maybe I could write that might be useful from me in particular. Yeah. That would be fun to do. and I reached out, and they seemed excited about it, and so it was really fun to get to do that. And so, but it was very different just to have all of that. And the book, to tell you what I'm talking about, is I did it with Moody Publishers in Chicago, and the book is called How to Remember Forgotten Pathways to an Authentic Faith. And it is, it's essentially sort of like a guidebook to historical Christianity for people who've been raised in American evangelicalism. The idea that if you've been raised in American evangelicalism, most of your experience of Christianity has been communicated to you via product. And Christianity is not a great product. And so let me show you just really, really, really briefly as overview, like what Christianity has looked like in other cultures throughout history by looking at the songs and the prayers and the practices that Christians have used around the world over the centuries that we don't do here in America. So it's not a sin. I try to cut out all the cynicism and all the sort of criticism and just have it be, look at this, check this out. Sort of like a guidebook, like, and I kind of use this metaphor of like if you've only been in the gift shop for like a long time, and all of a sudden you step out and you see the Grand Canyon, being like, oh, this is so much better. So that's kind of what the book's about. And so yeah, it was fun to write it. I don't know if I'll ever get to write another one, but I really enjoyed it, and we'll see if anybody likes it. Or if they like it, they might be like, he's a heretic and he has to give us the money back.
Okay, this is a bit of a change in subject, but it's my show.
Yeah, it is.
You wrote up something about a show you did in Scotland?
I did.
and I know some of the people in here have read it, but for the people who haven't, would you tell us about that experience of that show in Scotland? The worst show you ever had, maybe?
Wait a minute.
It really was. One time you were in a spaceman suit playing, and nobody came. And this was bad. But this was worse than that, huh?
Here's the thing. I've probably played 2,500 concerts in my life. So I've played a lot of concerts. So, and, I would say 2,000 of them have been pretty good. Yeah. And so that's like 500 have been interesting, So, and maybe like 100 have been like not great, and which is pretty par for the course, I think. Yeah. So, but there have been maybe like 10 that have been like, these were bad, And there's like the one where you're like, I think I might get murdered. There's the one where you're like, that girl is weird. And then there's the one where like, there was the one where I was wearing a spacesuit, no one came. Like that one was soul crushing. And then there was this one, and I thought I was kind of past the bad shows. It's like I've done the bad shows. People come to my shows now. I get paid all the time now. Like it's okay. Like people, I've done those. Okay. There was also here's another one. I once played a show in Virginia, and it was this coffee house venue, and the people had sold it out. It was a great night. The show was going great, and then the promoter from the back of the room, I was doing requests. The promoter requested an Andy Gullahorn song, and I realized, as we all did in the room, that the person who booked the show booked the other Andy. Like booked the wrong Andy. Like, I don't know. We're all at the wrong show. So that was fun.
Wait, did the poster say Andy Gullahorn?
No, but I think the whole time she thought she had booked Andy Gullahorn. And so that one was fun. Like, hi. That was a fun call to make to Andy, though, when I got in the car. Like, dude. That was fun. So anyway, we were it was just December. We were in the Christmas show tour with Andrew, and we were in Scotland, Edinburgh, Scotland, which is a place I'd never been. And it was beautiful. It was an amazing old church. And we had just come over from the States and was jet lagged, and I don't know. There was all this kind of. Andrew was so like. He was both so excited that we were over there, and he was also stressed that we were over there, and he'd spent a lot of money to get us all over there, and it was kind of a high stress day, and we, if you've seen that show, like all the rest of us who were in the band all play like one song in the first half of the show. So I have one song. Shouldn't be hard.
One job.
And so I got up and I introduced the song that I've played 200 times, and then the introduction went great. It's feeling great. Room was great. A bunch of Scottish people. They're like super into it. And then I started playing the song. Went to the mic for the first word, and like nothing. Like I just couldn't remember the words. And I have a little joke that I stole from Jason Gray that you do when you like forget the words, because I'll forget the words sometimes. Like, I always get the words right on my record. Tried again. Still didn't come. And then like full on had a panic attack. Like panic, like a full on like panic attack, like heart racing, face white, flop sweat. And so Andrew has his phone in his pocket. He pulls his phone out. He like Googles the lyrics. And he hands it. Jess raises it next to me. Jess grabs the phone. She's standing next to me holding the words. And my eyes are so like, I couldn't focus. I couldn't read them. And it was so embarrassing. And I'm like, these people don't know me. And people have driven like hundreds of miles, and they've waited for 10 years for this show to come to their country, and I'm just sucking. And Andrew, I'm like, my friend, I'm letting him down, and I'm like, and of course I'm not thinking about the words, I'm just thinking about all this other stuff, you know? And it's just like raining down on me. And you're just thinking all the thoughts, like people can't count on you, like you always let people you're just thinking all that stuff. And I just was, it was a nosedive. And meanwhile, I'm still playing guitar, and my tone's pretty sick, you know. And I'm like, it's, you know, so I'm kind of making jokes, and I'm like, I'm struggling so hard, and Jess is kind of also singing along a little bit to kind of help me, because she knows, because she's heard it hundreds of times. and so I kind of like fight through it and get to the other side. It was a 4-minute song. It takes about 8 minutes. And I did it. I mean, I got to the other side of it. And it was just destroyed. And the place like erupted. Like standing ovation. Like they were, and Scottish standing, like they were like, wow. And they had all been drinking before they got there, you know, like they were. And that night, I mean, I was just ashamed. And I had to sit there, and the way that show is too, then I had to sit on stage for like 45 minutes while other people played songs perfectly. And then like we got an accident, and then we come back out, and then we do and I remembered I got everything else right. I'm a professional, I did my job, you know, and Andrew sings the Begat song of like, you know, I sing the harmony of like, you know, whatever, all those crazy songs, those crazy word names. Like, I remember all that. And anyway, after the show, I just want to go in a hole and die. And I was the last one on the bus because there were so many people that wanted to talk to me. Because they were so like moved by my performance. And some lady just came up, she was crying, she just hugged me and walked away. And I talked to probably 40 people. I just had conversation after conversation. People just like, I don't know, just the sweetest conversations. And then the next night, I played the same song perfectly. And 2 people came up to me after the show And they were both people who'd been to the show the night before. And they were like, man, you really sucked last night. That was awesome. And not one person said anything about how great of a job I did that night when I did it well. And when I got back from the tour, I probably have gotten 5, 8 emails from people who were there, Instagram messages from people like, it was the most impactful song I played last year. And it was a failure, you know? And I played thousands of songs last year, and the rest of them went fine.
Yeah. What do you make of that?
In our weakness, he is strong, you know? I mean, that's it. And vulnerability is important, and not giving up is important, and people want to see your friends care for you. Like, they didn't see me, I wasn't struggling on my own. Like, they saw Andrew hand the phone to Jess stand there next to me. Jess, who, by the way, I was her A&R guy. When I talk about, like, I discover artists and mentor them and help build, like, that, I did that with Jess. Like, that's how people know about who Jess is, because I did that with Jess. Mm-hmm. So, like, Jess is doing that for the person who kind of helped create her career. And not that she would have been fine without me, but I did get to do that for her. Right. Like, did get to me my job, and so, like, that's just, which also added to my embarrassment. It's like my kid doing that for me, you know, or like my younger sister or something. And but people, like, got to see a community. You know, that's what people want to see, and people want to see that in you. And, like, when they read your books, and, like, nobody wants to see an artist in isolation. Nobody wants to be a person in isolation. And so we all want to think that when we fail, somebody is going to be there caring for us. And so I think there's something really powerful about seeing that represented. Yeah. I don't know, man.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up in just a minute because I want to give people time to ask some questions. But I do. So, have y'all heard Andy's podcast, The Pivot? Yeah. Oh, if you haven't, you need to. And Pivot's coming back. Is that what
I'm gonna start it up again this year. Yeah, a couple months. Yeah,
very exciting.
Thanks.
Because that's one of my all-time favorite podcasts. You do a great job on that.
Thank you.
So that's great news. Okay, well, let's open up to just some questions from the audience.
What was the song? Did you say what song it was?
Oh, it was a song called The Year of the Locust, which is also, the whole thing I can't remember is he will redeem the years the locusts have eaten, which is like, when I could get it out, it was also like kind of a fitting lyric too.
The impression I've gotten both from the music industry and also publishing is more and more people want, like, the prepackaged, like, we don't need any development. You're already good to go. We don't have to invest much in you anymore. So just go make something that we can make a lot of money on, and we don't have to develop. And as creatives who need mentorship, when that isn't being handed to you by someone, what is an effective way to ask for that and get those going when it's not being handed, and you don't have the connections of 20 years, and cold emailing people isn't going to get you help or attention? Yeah. What is an effective way to ask for help at the beginning, kind of now, when those things aren't being given to you?
Yeah. You are right. Our industries are fundamentally broken as far as we do not feed the beginning of our creative life cycle, and we have starved sort of the natural life cycle of what we need for even from a just commercial standpoint. If we think of art as a product, like we would, like crops, like we are only harvesting and never planting, and it is ridiculous. And we are just asking these crops to keep growing on their own, and then yelling at the crops for not growing on their own. And so when I said, I'm working on a little thing that I can, like, I fundamentally think that we need some new systems. And want to try to help build some of those because I think it's wrong. But, and it's going to just topple. But you're right, that is the case. So like most publishing companies, like book publishers, if you're an author, like aren't going to sign an author unless they already have a platform. Like I realized that the reason that I was able to get my book deal is because I'd sold records, which is dumb and it's not fair, but it was helpful. And also, I didn't get the biggest book deal or anything. They're just like, well, we'll put this guy's book out. Like, it wasn't like, didn't get a J.K. Rowling advance or anything. But, like, we'll design a cover, you know. But I think what you can do is realize that all those companies are toolboxes. Right? Is they are just pre-made toolboxes. So all a record company is, and all a publishing company, like a book publisher is. And all they have ever been, even though they've sold themselves as something else, all they have ever been is a toolbox. So they're a marketing company, and they're a graphic design company, and they're a PR company, and they're a bank that have been prepackaged to give you a terrible loan and these prepackaged services. That's it. That's all they are. All of those things you can get on your own. You can get a better loan, and you can go find any of those services on your own if you need them.
I think, though, my question is besides the commercial.
The
mentorship in the craft.
Yes.
Like, how do you find those mentors when, again, it's not being handed to you?
I would say that you are in a room where this is happening more than it's going to happen at any book publisher. I assigned a book publisher. Nobody did anything for me. I've had two meetings. I told them I would have liked to write this book. I had a coffee meeting, and then 3 months later, another coffee meeting, and then I turned in a book 6 months later. I didn't get mentored. I got to write a book. I found I'm good at it all. It's because I'm friends with people like Jonathan. This is it. Like, you're doing it. So building your community, like the fact that, like, I hope that if I'm good at any of the stuff I'm good at, which I'm not the best in the world at any of it, but it's because I'm friends with people like Andy Goldhorn and Andrew Peterson and Jonathan Rogers. And like, we've all been friends for 20 years. And so we're better at the thing that we're doing because we've been around each other. You're in a room full of people and you're making friends with them, and do whatever you can to be around them more. And find a way to be intentional. And that's the word, intentional. Hey, I know we're here twice a year, but can we meet once a month or every 2 weeks on Zoom? What can we do? In what ways can we be in touch? And can we create ways to be doing what we're doing and interacting with each other's work? Because no company is ever going to do that for you at any level. In the record company world, Warner Brothers is not doing that. Universal is not doing that for any artists. Everybody's doing it on their own. So this is the best possible thing. And so if you've got friends and you've got relationships and you go, this person wrote this amazing book and your community knows it, all of a sudden that community is they're gonna help you figure out how to do the thing. Well, let's figure out how to get this person a PR blast, or let's get them an interview. Let's get them we got to get them raise $2,000 to get this thing done, or whatever. Like, we're going to do it. Your community is going to help you do it. And, or I hope they will. But I think that's all it's ever been. And those monolithic things are mostly myth.
I've heard you talk about bowling together and the impact that had on your book with Larry. I'd like to hear you talk about that together, because I've heard the story. I don't know if Andrew knows the story.
I don't think it was as big a deal to Andy as it was to me. And we were just starting to be friends at the time, the way I remember it. But we were in a bowling league, and we were bowling. We happened to be on the same lane that day, and he was asking what I was working on, and I said, I'm working on this biography of Flannery O'Connor. It's been struggling for a year and a half. I can't get it. It's actually more than a year and a half. I just can't get it. Can't get done. And it's like, so, like, what's it about? And I said, well, I'm trying to tell about Flannery O'Connor for Christian people who are readers and know they're supposed to like Flannery O'Connor, but they just don't. He goes, well, that's me. and so that was literally that day. I stopped thinking about all the Flannery O'Connor scholars who were more qualified than me to write that book, and I just sat down there and said, what would I like Andy Osenga to know today about Flannery O'Connor? And I'd write that morning, and within a few weeks, it was done. And Andy, it was almost, I didn't have a picture of Andy on my desk, but I could have. I thought about Andy every day, and I felt like when it was over, Andy and I are big buddies, and Andy's over there minding his own business, Although, when that book, I had the same release date for that book as Leonard the Lonely Astronaut.
How do you remember that? Remember we did some videos together where I would play songs and you would read the book at the same time.
It was the other way around. I was singing a song and you were reading the book.
Oh, was that right? No. It's funny though. I remember my Annie Downs is a good friend of ours, and she's an author, and she said that she always puts, whenever she writes a book, that she tries to write a book for somebody else, so she always puts a picture on her desk of who she's writing for.
Well, and you were who I wrote the Flannery O'Connor book for.
I love that. And I like the book.
Yeah. Well, we should probably wrap up there. Andy Gold. Nope.
Keep that in.
Andy Osenga. I'm so glad you were here. Good night.
I'm so happy.
The Habit Podcast is brought to you by The Rabbit Room, where art nourishes community and community nourishes art. You can support their work, including this podcast, by becoming a member. Visit rabbitroom.com/membership. Special thanks as well to Taylor Leonard for letting us use her song Diamonds as the theme music for the Habit Podcast. You can learn more about Taylor and follow her work at taylorleonard.com. The Habit membership is a library of resources for writers by me, Jonathan Rogers. More importantly, The Habit is a hub of community where like-minded writers gather to discuss their work and give each other a little more courage. Find out more at thehabit.co.
If you've enjoyed this podcast episode, consider joining the Rabbit Room membership. Your membership helps sustain this community, funding everything from publishing and podcasts and theater productions to events and programs that support artists who create with a Christ-centered vision. We'd love to have you on board. Learn more at rabbitroom.com/member.